Summer 2022. An auction house in Boston, USA. A single lot goes up for sale. The estimate is $400,000. Now, when you hear a lot worth $400,000, what comes to mind? A famous painting? A luxury watch? A rare car? No. It was a small glass vial holding 40 milligrams of gray powder, and mounted beside it, 3 cockroach carcasses lined up in a row. That is a $400,000 item. 3 cockroaches, the same species right down to the scientific name as the one you flattened with a slipper last night. But in the middle of the bidding, a letter arrives from a NASA attorney. The gist of it goes like this: that belongs to us. Stop the bidding immediately. NASA had launched a legal action to get 3 dead cockroaches back. Why? Had those cockroaches stolen something from NASA? The story goes back to 1969. Apollo 11 went to the moon and came home. Armstrong left his footprint, planted the flag, and returned. The lunar rock they brought back weighed 21.3 kilograms. It was the greatest moment in human history. But behind all that celebration, a few people at NASA wore a completely different expression. What if they brought something bad back with them? At the time, they called it the moon bug, lunar germs. And when you think about it, it was a fair worry. Nobody knew whether there were microbes on the moon. Nobody had ever checked. And if there were, life on Earth would have no immunity to them at all. We had never been exposed. The greatest achievement in human history could, with one slip, have been the beginning of the worst accident in human history. The scenario was that humanity might import a brand new disease with its own 2 hands. So the 3 astronauts were quarantined the moment they got back. And the lunar rock they carried home went through a far more direct test. What was the method? They fed it to things. They ground up the rock and fed it to insects, to fish, to small creatures. Then they watched to see whether those animals died. Among the first living things ever to eat material from beyond Earth was a German cockroach. That exact species, the one living under your kitchen sink. So here is the summary. To find out whether the material humanity brought back from the moon was safe, they fed it to cockroaches first. You know how a king had someone taste his food first to check for poison? A royal food taster? The cockroach played that role, on behalf of all of humanity. The creature humans hate most was the first thing to protect them. Those cockroaches were sent to the University of Minnesota, where an entomologist named Marion Brooks dissected them one by one. She opened their stomachs and removed the lunar dust inside, sliced the tissue into slides, and studied it under a microscope. The result? No evidence of an infectious agent was found. The lunar dust was not toxic, and the cockroaches showed no abnormality. Only then could humanity relax, and the experiment was simply forgotten, for 53 years at least. This is where it gets absurd. When the experiment ended, those specimens should have gone back to NASA. Every Apollo sample is federal property, but the specimens were never recovered. Professor Brooks simply took them home and put them on display. Neatly framed, no less. 1 vial holding lunar dust, 3 cockroach carcasses, a few microscope slides. She hung it in the living room and probably told every guest who came by, this came back with Apollo 11. From her side, that is understandable. A person who spent a lifetime studying insects had taken part in an Apollo 11 experiment. It was the souvenir of a lifetime. 40 years passed like that. Professor Brooks died in 2007, and in 2010, her daughter sold the specimens. Then in 2022, they went up for auction again. That is when NASA sends its letter. The wording is blunt. All Apollo samples belong to NASA, and no individual, no university, no institution was ever given permission to keep them after analysis.
Especially not for sale or private display.
A week later, a second letter follows. Find the owner and begin the return process. The auction was halted on the spot and closed with no sale, which leaves us here. 3 cockroaches that ate lunar dust in 1969 now sit at the center of an ownership dispute between a government and a private citizen in the 2020s. There are cockroaches that get hit with a slipper, and there are cockroaches the United States government hires lawyers to retrieve. The most expensive cockroaches on Earth. Now look at the title again. There are cockroaches that went to the moon? Strictly speaking, these cockroaches never went anywhere near it.
They sat quietly in a Minnesota laboratory. The moon came to them. They touched the moon by eating its dust. So was there really no Earth life that made it to the moon? There was, and quite recently. Something far stranger and far tougher than a cockroach. And that story is not a success story. It is an accident report. This time, Earth life really did land on the lunar surface, or more precisely, crashed into it. April 11th, 2019, an Israeli lander called Bereshit was on its way down to the moon. It was the first attempt by a privately funded spacecraft to land there, a historic moment. But in the final seconds of the braking burn, a gyroscope fails, and with it, the main engine cuts out. Altitude, 150 meters. Speed, 500 kilometers per hour. 5 times highway speed, driving into the ground with no brakes. There was no way to stop it. The impact was violent, and debris scattered across a radius of 100 meters. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter photographed the site 11 days later, which is how we know exactly where it came down. Up to here, it is just an unfortunate failure. The problem is what was on board. A nonprofit called the Arch Mission Foundation had put an object on that lander. It was called the Lunar Library, about the size of a DVD, a disk built from 25 stacked layers of extremely thin nickel. It holds around 30 million pages of information, the entire English Wikipedia, decoding keys for 5,000 languages, things like that. The intention was this: let us back up the Earth so that whatever happens to this planet, a record of humanity survives on the moon. Still romantic so far, but a few weeks before launch, a passenger nobody expected slips on board. Human DNA samples and several thousand dehydrated tardigrades. Tardigrades, the ones people call water bears. Half a millimeter long, they look like microbes, and they are famous for surviving anything. When conditions turn dangerous, they expel nearly all the water in their bodies and shut down completely. This is called the ton state. In that state, they endure -200 degrees, vacuum and radiation. They can stay that way for decades, then wake the moment they meet water. If you had to name the hardest animal on Earth to kill, this one is always near the top of the list. So inside that disk were several thousand of the hardest to kill animals on Earth, sleeping, and it struck the lunar surface at 500 kilometers per hour. So, did they survive? To answer that, researchers ran an actual experiment in 2021. They loaded tardigrades into bullets and fired them. Really, to find out how hard the hardest to kill animal on Earth really is, they shot it out of a gun. Here is what they found. The survival limit sat around 0.9 kilometers per second, or roughly 1.14 gigapascals of shock pressure. And the speed at which Bereshit hit was almost exactly in that range. One of the study's authors put it this way: the shock pressure generated by the spacecraft's metal frame on impact would have gone far past that threshold. So the honest answer is this: they probably died. Most of them. Maybe all. Nobody is going up to check, so nobody knows. Here is the genuinely unsettling part. Suppose that somewhere in that nickel disk, one single tardigrade came through completely intact. It still cannot wake up. To come back from the ton state, a tardigrade needs exactly one thing: water. Liquid water has to touch its body for metabolism to switch back on. Is there liquid water on the moon? There is not. There is no atmosphere and no pressure, so water cannot exist as a liquid there. Surface temperatures climb to 120 degrees in the lunar day and drop to -170 at night, and it cannot reproduce either. Without water, it can do nothing at all. So the best case scenario looks like this: alive, but never able to wake. At this very moment, somewhere in the Sea of Serenity, several thousand animals from Earth may be lying there like a frozen frame, neither dead nor alive. One drop of water from anyone who went there could wake them. And nobody is going. The hardest to kill organism on Earth may become the longest imprisoned organism on Earth. Tens of millions of years, perhaps hundreds of millions. There is one more part of this story that leaves a bad taste. Space exploration has something called planetary protection rules. It is an international agreement not to scatter Earth life carelessly across other worlds. Here is why that matters. Suppose we go to Mars, or anywhere, and discover life. And it turns out to be Earth bacteria we carried there ourselves. The greatest discovery in human history becomes a contamination incident. The moon sits in a relatively relaxed category under these rules. It has no water and no atmosphere, so Earth life struggles to survive there anyway. But the problem was procedural. The Arch Mission Foundation's disk did not declare that it contained biological material in the way the rules anticipated. It had been slipped in a few weeks before launch. Without anyone's permission, several thousand Earth organisms stowed away to another world. So after this incident, a quiet conversation restarted about how much private operators must declare when they put something on a spacecraft. Not even the government knew exactly what humanity had left on the moon. Now, before we wrap up, let us go back to the first question. Why cockroaches, of all things, to eat that lunar dust? Partly because they are easy to raise, but honestly, because they do not die easily. If your test subject dies mid-experiment, you get no result. So why are they so hard to kill? Let us count. 4 facts are enough to explain why this species outlasted the dinosaurs. 1. They live without a head. This sounds like an urban legend, but it is true. We breathe through the nose and mouth, so losing the head kills us instantly. Insects, however, breathe through openings along their sides. They are called spiracles. So losing the head causes no problem at all for oxygen supply. And because they store fat in the body, they do not starve to death right away either. So they just walk around for about a week. A headless cockroach walking around for a week. Picture that, and it is a fairly horrifying image. So why do they die after a week? Thirst. With no mouth, they cannot drink. They do not starve, they dry out. 2. There is a factory inside them. Open a cockroach's abdomen and you find a mass of fat. And inside those fat cells is a separate chamber. They grow bacteria in there. What those bacteria do is manufacture the amino acids the cockroach needs. So a cockroach can survive on nutritionally worthless food. Whatever is missing, the tenants inside synthesize and supply. That is why it can live on paper or on soap. Each one is running its own private supplement factory inside its body. 3. The body is flexible. A cockroach looks rigid. It is not. It can compress itself flat and squeeze through a gap the thickness of a coin. It can even keep running while compressed. That moment when you step on one, think it is dead, and watch it slip away, that is not your imagination.
4. They are fast. A cockroach covers dozens of its own body lengths every second. Scaled up to human size, that is tens of meters per second. And it moves its 6 legs in alternating sets of 3. At any instant, 3 legs are on the ground, so no matter how fast it runs, it never falls. That is why it can cut so sharply into a turn without ever sliding. One thing worth clearing up here. People often say cockroaches never evolved, that they have looked the same since the age of the dinosaurs. That is not quite right. To be precise, it mixes in the misconception that evolution means progress. Evolution is not getting better. It is just changing to fit the environment. A woolly sheep did not survive because it knew winter was coming. It just happened to be woolly, and winter happened to be cold. The cockroach, in its current form, already gets through nearly every environment. So there was no reason to change. It is not that it failed to change. It never needed to. Let us pull it together. Cockroaches did not go to the moon. Instead, they ate lunar dust first on behalf of humanity, and after death, became worth $400,000, and are now the subject of a legal recovery effort by the United States government. Tardigrades did go to the moon, but they hit it at 500 kilometers per hour. They probably died, and even if they are alive, without water, they can never wake. One of them became priceless in death. The other may be trapped on the moon, unable even to die. Cockroaches will survive a nuclear war. Everyone has heard that line at least once. But there is no way to verify it, because even if we wanted to check, we would already be gone. So I would rather not find out. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe and hit like. This has been Battle Wild.